Game Night Studios here with another painting tutorial. A lot's been going on. I'm excited to bring you guys some new stuff. Right now I'm going to be showing you a how to paint Grey Knights tutorial from the Warhammer 40k universe. A buddy of mine wanted me to paint some for him, so I figured let's make a video out of it, show everybody how I do it. I like giving them a little blue fade on their weapons, makes it look real crisp, it adds that nice pop of color, and they end up looking pretty slick. On the Game Night Studios side, we got a lot going on. Recently hit up some distributors, so I'm going to start carrying paint and other mini accessories, maybe even some minis themselves, up on my store. So check out my eBay store. Type in ebay.com/USR/Game Night Studios, and all my stuff should pop up. Got links in the description. I got links at the end of the video. If you want to see anything I have up for sale, that's where you're going to find painted minis or all the products I'm now going to be selling. So lots of stuff happening. Very soon I'm going to start making battle reports, and those are going to be on the channel probably for Star Wars Legion. I've recorded two. One, the camera was too shaky to use, so it was a learning experience, and then the second one I just recorded. I'm going to try editing that, putting it up. Hopefully you guys like that. If there's any content you want to see, let me know. I'll get it up and running. In the meantime, enjoy the painting tutorial, how to paint Grey Knights. Thanks for coming out. Almost forgot, I started selling 3D printed tabletop battle terrain, so if you're interested in that, that's up on the store as well. Alright, we're going to paint some Grey Knights today. Let's get started. You get your Grey Knight, I based it in black more so you can see the details. It's not really necessary for the steps that I'm going to show you, but if you want to base in black you can. I think I just used a basic black primer spray paint. It's not really important. If you want to use an airbrush black you can, but I'm going to show you how to do this with a few tricks that make it a little bit faster. We're going to grab some Rust-Oleum metallic finish, and we're just going to hit the entire model with this to make it have that nice silvery coat. And we're going to grab some shiny silver from Army Painter, and we are going to touch up any of the areas that spray paint didn't hit. So don't worry about drenching it in that spray paint. We're just going to use any kind of basic metallic spray paint. I used Rust-Oleum. I'm sure there's many painter brands that work just as well, and this bright shiny silver from Army Painter. It's not gonna be a perfect match, but it doesn't really need to be, because we're gonna wash this and then dry brush it, and all this is gonna come together. So this is just to make sure you don't miss anything. You don't want any of that bare plastic just showing. So we're gonna grab, again, going back to Army Painter, their washes are amazing. We're gonna grab some dark tone. We're gonna hit the entire mini with this dark tone. So the first step was to hit it with the Rust-Oleum, any kind of shiny paint, any kind of shiny spray paint. Then touch up any of those little gaps with the Army Painter, and then grab the dark wash, cover the entire mini in the dark wash. This is going to add a lot of contrast to it. It's going to get all the little shadows you wouldn't really be thinking about. Now I forgot to paint the blade. It happens, I overlooked it. So going back now, painting the blade with that shiny silver, and then hit it again with that wash. That way it gets a little bit of the shading on it. And there we go, we had it. We got all the wash all over the mini. We let it dry. Now we're going to move back to that shining silver from Army Painter, and we're going to grab a nice soft brush, and we're just going to dry brush the entire mini with this shining silver. That's going to naturally highlight it and add even more contrast to the mini. It's going to hit all the edges. It's going to hit all the little flat parts that shouldn't really have a highlight. The entire mini is going to get hit with this. And then we're going to go in and add some of the finer details. But this is the very first beginning steps, and this is really what's going to make the mini pop. If this isn't done right, the whole mini looks bad. So take your time, get it where it's supposed to be. Be sure to put more of it on the areas naturally light would hit, like the top of it. Grab yourself some testers, dull coat, and hit the mini with that. That's just going to lock everything in. It's going to protect everything. Because right now, or before that, it would just be wash sitting on top of the metal, and it could get scraped off real easy. So we hit it with one quick coat of dull coat, let it all dry, grab some scale 75 old copper, and this is going to be the beginning of all the gold trim on the mini. He's got a nice big shoulder pad that's got a whole bunch of sigils and things on it. So we're going to hit that entire thing with the old copper. He's got some detail on his sword. He's got some detail on his chest. Anything you want gold, this is going to be the first step to that process. Take your time, be sure not to get any of it on the metal. We spent a good amount of time getting it on there, getting it based. Matching it again wouldn't be too hard. If you do tend to go, or if you do go over a little bit and get it on the metal, or the shiny silver I should say, just go back to that shining silver. Fix it, hit it with that dark wash again, and it'll be good as new. But it's a lot easier just to take your time and do your best not to make any of those mistakes. These minis have a lot of detail and you don't want to miss anything. So take your time, give it a good once over, make sure you got everything you want gold. Hit with that old copper. That's going to be the first step of that highlight to that gold. Second step is going to be again scale 75 paint. Grab that Victorian brass. I love scale 75. Their paints are amazing. Well, I should say their metallics are amazing. I've never actually used their regular pigment paint, but I can only imagine if it's anything like the metallics, it's just as good. But we're going to be doing an edge highlight on anything you wanted gold that you hit with that old copper. Now we're on to the Victorian brass. Just be real careful, just hit any of the edges on anything that's got a flat edge. If you're doing something like this that's rounded like the shoulder, you want to grab that same color and just do a light, almost dry brush over the top of the runes. We don't want to put a ton of wet paint on them because it's going to seep in between the runes. We're trying to just get the top of the sigils. Those deep recesses we still want to look like that old copper. And we do an even more extreme highlight here. Again, scale 75, Dwarven gold. This is a very, very bright, shiny gold. This one's just going to be hitting the edges of what we're going for. Like the very, very tips of the edges. So if you hit an entire edge with that last color, with this one, you want to hit probably half, maybe even less, to make it appear sharper. Take your time. Again, don't get any on the metal, the metallic, I should say. So, with the shoulder pad, we're going to be hitting just sort of the upper half of that dome shape. That's going to make it more poppy. It's going to make it stand out a bit more. Then we're going to grab our ivory from Game Color. Get just a damp brush and stir it up because their paint tends to be a little bit thick, but it's still really good paint. And we're going to be hitting all of the scrolls that he has attached to his armor. We're going to be hitting his little skirt with this nice kind of linen-y white color. And we're going to shade the robe and we're going to shade the sigils differently. So it's okay for us to paint them with that same exact white. Because white tends to change drastically when you hit it with a wash. Now you might have to hit each one of these areas you want white 2 to 3 times with this watered down paint to make it thin and on there exactly how you want it. I'm going to grab some blood red and we're going to be hitting the wax part of the sigil. That's going to be the first step. We are going to shade the wax, we're going to shade the white, we're going to shade the face, we're going to shade everything on this, but this is the next step here with the blood red on the wax sigils. Highlighting those, we're going to grab our fire orange. Again, these are from Reaper. Reaper makes really good paints. They're probably the majority of the paints that I use. And we're going to go right over the top and kind of highlight these sigils. We're going to wash these later, and it's going to bring both of these two colors together. Since they're such a small sigil, I wouldn't worry too much about blending. The wash should blend them together enough. And we're actually going to hit them with the same wash that we hit the face with, so save that step for later. Scale 75, we're going to grab the dark metal. This is one of my favorite colors from them. It's such a unique dark metal color. This is what I use to add just another hint of variation, because we have so much metal on there already. All of his armor is metal, his blades metal. We have a lot of that. So adding this to some of those other details, like that little brick thing on the top of the pike, the little ornament he has on his knee pad, the ornament he has on his necklace, or wherever you'd want to put it, just to add some variation to the mini. I like putting it on the handle, it makes it pop more. If you have too many things metal or too many things one color, it tends to be pretty bland. So this will add some nice little detail, and it kind of draws your eye to the more shiny parts of the Mini. So again, we're going back to the Reaper paints. We're grabbing tanned skin. He's got a little bit of his face showing, so we got to paint that skin. So if the paint's a little bit too thick, then again, get a damp brush, stir it a little bit, because pay special attention to the faces when you paint those. Any sort of thickness or a couple lines off really stand out on the face. If you had a couple lines off on the back or on the armor, it doesn't really pop out as much. Meanwhile, you could have a beautifully painted face, but if one of the eyes is off a little bit, he just looks funky and silly. So don't be afraid to water down the tanned skin and do 2 coats or so to make sure you get just a nice, flat, thin coating on the face. We're going to grab the skin or tan skin highlight, and we're just going to be hitting the nose, the eyebrows, maybe a little bit on the forehead. Go real light with this because this is just going to be like an accent color on the face. This just adds that nice little bright bit of shading to that skin color. Here in a second, we're going to be hitting this with a wash, and that's going to, again, add some contrast to it, and it's going to blend this highlight and the tan skin together. And it's going to look nice. We're going back to that ivory color. If you still have that paint out and ready, go ahead and use that. I should have done this when I did that step, or I should have done this step first, but I kind of forgot. So we're going to be painting the eyes. That same white ivory. This guy's only got one eye because the other one has got a nice little robotic thing over it. So just hit the eye socket with that white ivory, grab yourself some pure black and a real fine detail brush. Sometimes it helps if you hold the Mini upside down. Just make a nice little thin black line going straight through the center of the eye. It's okay if you go a little bit too high or a little bit too low. That's super easy to fix. It's way easier to do that and get a pupil right where you want it and just touch up the skin around it than it is to try to get this just 100% perfect every time. Like here you can see I go a little bit over onto the eye. And all you gotta do is go back with that skin and just hit whatever you went over with it. Grab yourself some gloss varnish. We're gonna be painting his little robe with this. The reason I'm painting this with the gloss is gonna break up the surface tension of the wash and make it not quite as strong and a little bit easier to work with. I'm only going to be putting this on the robe just because the sigils are a little bit easier to work with. So quick shade mixing medium and light tone, both army colors or army painter colors. Stir them both together. The mixing medium is going to make the light tone not as severe, and it's just going to make it a lot easier to work with because white tends to take whatever you put on it and just run with it. Like we were able to paint the silver armor on this guy just by dumping dark tone on it and it worked fine. If we did anything like that to the white robe, it would destroy it. It would make it look just filthy and bad. So adding the gloss on there, it gives you some time to manipulate the wash and put it right where you want it to go. That same wash we are going to hit the sigils with. They're smaller, so it is okay to just dump the wash on them because they're old scrolls and fabric. They've been sitting out in the army field, and this isn't his first battle. He's been carrying those things around. It's okay for them to look a little dirty. We're going to add some mild brown to this mixture that we already have of light tone and mixing medium. This is going to make it just a little bit more intense. We're going to add this to just the tips of the robe, just like the lower fourth or so, to make it have a nice gradual fade into a little bit darker. Like he's been walking around with this on some dirty battlefields, and yeah, it just got dirty over time. And we want that to look realistic. We don't want it to look silly. So that's how we do it. A little bit of mild brown in the wash. Just hitting the lower part of the fabric. Again, if that's not intense enough for you, you can always add a little bit more. I find that when I'm recording, for some reason, the washes don't look quite as intense, but if I were to make them look more intense on here, they'd look a little too intense in real life. So this is what I would recommend going with. If you want it more intense, add some more mild brown. You can add some dark brown if you want it really intense. I just wanted it to look a little bit dirty, and I feel like I pulled off that effect with this wash. So I'm happy with it. And again, if you want to tweak stuff, go for it. It's your mini, have fun with it. So we got everything washed, we let that dry. We get to wash the face now. Add a bit of contrast to the face. Again, this is going to pull the highlights we already put on there together. Not only are we going to hit the face with this wash, we're also going to hit those wax sigils that are orange and red. Because this is kind of a mix between a red and an orange wash. I love this stuff for skin. It's just a nice little flesh wash. It goes on there, it adds that perfect little skin pigment you wouldn't really think about. We're not worried about washing it down, or watering it down, I mean. We're just going right at it, hitting all the sigils. Because this is a little bit darker than the orange, so it should pull those two colors together. Just hit it with the exact same color we did the skin with. We're going to let that dry, and then we're going to move on to the blood red again. He's got a little bit of machinery in his eye. I thought that would be cool to just add a nice little red dot to it, so he's got some, it just looks like a targeting scanner or something. Back to the pure black, and we are going to add some script to these scrolls. So you just hold the brush really lightly in your hand and just very, very lightly drag it in squiggly lines across these sigils. That's going to make it look like it's got scribbly writing on it. If you want to try to draw like a little symbol on it, you can. I wasn't that worried about it. I think the scribbly writing, the texts look fine, so that's what I did. Be sure to put a couple breaks in there so it's not just the same looking squiggly line everywhere. You can put a little squiggle, break, another line. It's just, from far away I imagine that's how they would look anyway. So take your time, don't get any big splotches on these. These are already washed and shaded, so this is just a nice little detail effect. There's no sense in wiping out good shading work with little scribbles of text. So just be careful with it, don't go overboard. Got my little cat in the corner helping me out. Helper cat always has to make an appearance. So now the fun part, we're going to add some nice detail to this. This is just sticky tack. You can get this at Hobby Lobby or probably even Walmart. It's the same stuff they used to use in the classroom to make stuff stick to the walls. Exact same stuff. I find it's really easy to work with, and I like using this in pairing with painting tape, just to make sure I don't get any overspray, because we're going to be adding a nice blue fade to this sword. Or this pike, I guess. So you just get as much of the detail covered up with that sticky tack as you can, and then we're going to grab some blue painter's tape and just shield this mini, because we did all this work, got all this detail, everything's shaded, everything's looking nice, and the last thing we want to do is get a big blue spray all over the mini. Overspray is a very real thing, so it's okay if we hit a little bit of the gold, because I'd rather get the blade faded properly with the airbrush and have to touch up the gold than save the gold with the airbrush and then have to touch up this blue fade with a paintbrush. So we just add some thinner, airbrush thinner from Vallejo, and water into our airbrush, mix that together, and we're ready to go. We add in some, I don't know how to pronounce that, blue. We're going to be putting some blue, darker blue, any kind of darker blue in the airbrush. Stirring it, mixing it up, and then we're just going to be shading most of this blade with this blue. We don't want to just kill it with it. Probably 2 or 3 thin coats to get it where we want it. I want to cover about 75% of this blade, like the lower half of it, with this dark blue. You might have to put it on, let it sit for a minute to dry, and then hit it again. Otherwise, if you try to overdo it too much at once, it just kind of balls up and gets all watery and just doesn't look very good. So take your time with this. This is the detail that people are going to really notice, because it pops, it's cool, it fades. Our Mini is protected because we had that sticky tack on it. We got this painter's tape. Then we're going to switch over to some Surf Aqua. This is a much lighter blue, and we're going to put that just right in the pot with that dark blue. Eventually we are going to add probably just pure Surf Aqua, maybe even a lighter blue. And we're just going to hit probably the lower 50% with this blade. We hit 75% of the blade with that dark blue, and we're going to hit the lower 50% with this lighter mixture of that dark blue and really light blue. Now this one, I don't know the name of it, it's just a super light blue. It's almost white. This is what I would use if I was trying to make kind of a white fabric. And I just dump that directly in the pot as well. And just hit like the lower 25%. 1, maybe 2 coats. And that's going to give it that nice drastic fade. From metal to dark blue to light blue and everything in the middle. It's got a really cool gradient. And that's the detail that's going to make this Mini pop. Everything else is on point, so the blade really has to be on point. There we have it, looking fine, looking fancy. This stuff should come off real easy. If you want to make it even safer for the rest of the Mini, you can hit it with dull coat again before you put all this stuff on, but you shouldn't have to. The sticky tack comes off real easy. It shouldn't take any of the paint that you want to keep with it. It's kept our Mini safe. We don't have to touch up hardly anything. There's a little bit of blue that got on the gold. Like I said, that's really easy to fix. So we just go repeat the steps that you did with the gold originally. Grab that old copper. Or actually, Dwarven gold. So we're just going to go right to the Dwarven gold to touch this up. We're just going to hit any of these corners that we got blue on, because this is the bright gold. It's going to be the edge anyway, so just skip right to that. Touch it up, make it look good. Going back to the washes, we got our quick shade mixing medium and our mild brown, both from Army Painter. If you can't tell, I really like Army Painter washes. They just work well. I've tried a few others and I haven't really had any complaints, but Army Painter just has such a good selection. They've got like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different browns to pick from, so you get just the exact color you want all the time. And this is the color we're going to be using to shade that gold. So we want this not just on the gold, but actually on the edges around the gold as well. That's going to make it fade even better. So we're going to dunk it all over the shoulder. That way it gets in between the letters and just deep up in there, and that's going to add that contrast that we like and we're going for. Anywhere there's gold. We're also going to do this on the blade itself here. We're going to get just a tiny amount of it on that blue, because when that dries, it's going to add that nice little shadowing effect that we're looking for. There we go. We've got him done. Now we're going to paint that base. Grab some Deco Art black and just with a smaller brush hit right around those feet. That way when we go in with a bigger brush and hit the entire base with the black, we don't have to worry about messing up any of that metal that we have on the feet. Sometimes with bigger brushes they tend to get a little bit carried away, so grabbing a bigger brush, once we have that little detail effect, we're going to be hitting all the rest of the base, the entire edge of it. We just want the whole thing blacked out. That's going to really make the Mini pop. I highly recommend always paint your bases black. We're going to grab some Vallejo Earth Texture Dark Earth. This is the new game. This and just a piece of cork, you can have a sick looking base super easy. Back in the day, people would use static grass and things like that. If you're still using those, I mean, I'm sure there's some good effects you can pull off with them, but this is the new game right here. If you're still using static grass, then, I mean, you know, there's newer, cooler stuff out there. I used that stuff for years. It doesn't look anywhere near as cool as this stuff does. And it's super simple to use. So we take a couple slices of cork, we're reaching into our Vallejo Dark Earth, and we're just going to smear this all the way around the base. This is basically like rubber cement, with some texture and pigment in it. Probably sand, I'm betting. So get this all over the base, a little bit around the boots. Careful not to go just hog wild with it. You don't want it splashing up and getting on the Mini. But it just leaves such a cool effect. I love this stuff. They have sand, they have snow, they have anything you could ever want in this cool texture. And you just get it all over. I'm using a little scrapey tool. You could use a brush you don't like. Anything you want to use, you can use. It's just good stuff. And you get that all over the base. Grab, while it's still wet, grab the pieces of cork that you pulled off and just slide them and stick them into that dark earth texture. So try to put these in some interesting spots. You can have a couple of them pushed all together. This guy had his heel raised up, so I made sure to put a little piece right under his foot so it's like he's standing on it. He's pushing off on it. He's ready to go attack somebody. Grab some chestnut brown. We're going to be adding some detail to this. You can do this before it dries. You can do this after it dries. It doesn't really matter. It might be easier after, but if we're saving some time, we're just going to do it while it's wet. We're going to hit these pieces of cork with this chestnut brown. You can use as much paint as you want on these. They're rocks. They've already got their nice texture from the cork. Just cover them in that brown. Careful not to get it on the dirt. Careful not to get it on the Mini. We're going to grab some Secret Weapon Handlewood. Secret Weapon, some of my favorite paints. They have such good texture. And we're just going to dry brush with this Handlewood all the rocks. We're going to dry brush the base. Again, it's important to wait for the base to dry before you do this step. Just let it all dry. Dry brush the entire thing with Handlewood. Careful not to get it on your Mini. But there we go. It's looking fresh. We added some nice detail on that base with that. That's going to add some very cool contrast here in a sec. We're going to the strong tone Army Painter. Like I said, I love their washes. We're not even going to mix any mixing medium with this. We want a nice, sharp contrast on this base. And we are going to hit everything. We're going to hit the rocks. We're going to hit the base. We're not going to get it on the Mini. But all of it, all that texture, glob it on there. Use as much as you want. Don't worry about it. Go nuts with it. This is one of the more fun parts of painting these Minis, is you can just go nuts with this wash and this step. A lot of other steps, you got to be real fine and precise. Don't worry about it. Go nuts with it. There we go. We got it on there. We're going to let it dry. Now that it's added that nice little bit of contrast. There we go. We got that dried. I'm using a glove here because I don't want to mess up what I've got on there. We'll grab that Deco Art. We're going to repaint the rim of the base. Now we're not done with this base yet, but we are going to fix up the little touch-ups we got to do since we painted that base. We're going to hit the model with testers. We're done with all the painting steps of this Mini. So we're going to hit it with 2, maybe even 3 really light coats of dull coat. And we're going to add a little bit more to this. We got some grass effect we're going to add here. Wasteland Tufts from Battlefield XP. Again, Army Painter brand. These are fantastic. This is the stuff that has replaced static grass. Tufts of grass. It looks amazing. It's important to hit the Mini with the dull coat before this step, because the blades of grass might get in the way of it. They might collect it if you use too much and it'll just look kind of funky. And they don't really need dull coat. The whole point of dull coat is to protect the paint. These are tufts of grass. They don't have paint. So add a few of these anywhere you might want them. Elmer's glue to attach them to the base. Fan them out a little bit with your tweezers, and there you have it. You have a beautiful looking Mini with crazy amounts of detail, a nice blue fade on the sword. We got shaded armor, shaded gold, shaded base, tufts of grass everywhere, and this guy's looking fresh. If you paint your entire army like this, people are going to notice. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have anything else you want to see, let me know. I'll make a video about it if you guys have any questions. yeah, hit me up. I'm always coming out with more videos here at Game Night Studios. I'm starting to sell some products. If you're interested in any of the paints or things that I have up for sale, I'm going to put some links at the end of this you can check out. Helper Cat is always with me, getting in the way. She'll be here probably in every video because she seems to always want to include herself. She's a good cat. Just favorite hobby seems to be being in the way. But yeah, thanks for coming out. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Like, follow, subscribe.